When you've been living in exile for some 2,000 years, you become very suspicious of outsiders. The Jewish people have been living in exile outside of their land for most of their history, in small ghettos, in small shtetl. And naturally, they have become very suspicious of foreigners and outsiders because of the bad experiences that they've had. And this is despite the fact that the Torah tells us, "V'ahavtem et hager," you should love the foreigner. If somebody comes in and shows an interest in your religion, you should love them as much as possible. Nevertheless, it's part of the culture to be suspicious of people coming in from the outside. And specifically when they come to us and they offer us advice. Who are they to offer us advice? What a chutzpah, what a cheek to do such a thing. And yet in this week's parasha, we see that totally the opposite is true when it comes to Yitro, the father-in-law of Moshe Rabbeinu, our teacher Moses. Yitro is one of the most interesting characters in the Tanakh, in the Jewish Bible. He was Kohen Midian. That means he was the sheikh of Midian. He was the leading idolater in his time. He had served all different types of idolatry. And yet, he embraced Moshe as his son-in-law. And later, he embraced the Jewish religion. He heard what Hashem had done to the Egyptians. He heard of the splitting of the sea. He heard of the war against Amalek. And he came out into the wilderness accompanied by Moshe's wife Tzipporah and her 2 children, and he joined the Jewish people. He gave up a life of wealth and prosperity and prestige in Midian to come out to the wilderness to the Jewish people. And of course, naturally, people must have been very suspicious of him. But in one of the most incredible episodes in the Torah, we see that Moshe rose above this. Not only did he not reject the opinion and the advice of an outsider, but in fact, he embraced it. On the day after the Torah was given, Moshe sat down and began to teach the Jewish people. They came to him with all of their problems and all of their issues and all of their discussions and arguments. And Moshe was sitting the whole day and he was becoming tired out. Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, came to him and said, "What are you doing to yourself? What are you doing to this nation? You're going to become totally worn out. You need to set in place a system of judges, people who can help you to judge the nation. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to survive." And Moshe listened to what his father-in-law had said, and in fact, Hashem told him to do exactly that thing, to set up a system of courts and judges that would assist him in running the Jewish people. Now, this is really something most remarkable, that an entire parasha in the Torah should be named after an outsider, somebody who comes to join the Jewish people, someone whose background was not exactly marble and perfect, and yet this is something that happened. And our sages tell us something quite interesting about Yitro. When Yitro came to join the Jewish people, and Moshe told him about all of the miracles that had been done, Yitro says, "Ataya dati ki gadol Elokim." Now I know that God is greater than all other gods. Now I know. What does that mean? Well, of course, Yitro had served all types of idolatry. So he says, now I know, compared to all of the other types of idolatry, that Hashem is the true God. And the Midrash makes a very interesting point. It says that people come forward and offer their opinions on things. And not every opinion is valid. You have to see the experience and the knowledge of a person. If some arbitrary person had come and said to the Jewish people, "Now I know that God is great," well, we'll take what he says with a pinch of salt. But when Yitro comes and says, "Now I know that God is great," we prick up our ears and we listen to what he has to say. Because Yitro was a person who had studied all types of religions. He had tried everything. He had been a sheikh of other religions. And now he sees that God is the true God. And therefore we should listen to such a person. In the same vein, the Midrash tells us that King Solomon says in the book of Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, "Havel havelim hakol havel." Everything is futile. Everything is vanity. Money is vain. Fame is vain. It's all really nonsense at the end of the day. And we have to serve God. That's the point of life. The Midrash says the same thing. If any arbitrary person would come and say, everything is futile and vain, we would say to them, well, what do you know? Do you have wealth? Do you have prestige? If you had all of those things and still you said that that is vain and futile, well, perhaps we would listen to you. But King Solomon had that experience, and therefore his opinion was an opinion. So Moshe realized that he was getting advice not from a nobody, not from a person whose opinion wasn't valid, but somebody who had incredible life experience, specifically in religious matters. And he came to Moshe and he told Moshe, this is what you should do, otherwise you're going to tire yourself out. And Moshe listened to his father-in-law. And this is a very important lesson to us as the Jewish people. Yes, we have been oppressed. Yes, we have been put into ghettos. Yes, we are naturally suspicious of foreigners. But when somebody comes and gives us good advice, and we see that their opinion is a valid one, we should take it and we should embrace it. And that is why the Torah honors Yitro by naming an entire parsha after him. And not just any parsha, but the parsha in which the 10 Commandments appears. I wish you all a good Shabbat.